Welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors, where every single Monday at lunchtime we celebrate the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi because this is the capital of the outdoors in America. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi Radio Network. Some of you listen to SuperTalk Outdoors on supertalk.fm, Amazon Alexa, the SuperTalk Mississippi app, or you watch it on SuperTalk TV at C-Spire TV. Some of you actually watch it on Facebook or YouTube. But anyway, we try to be there whenever you want to be with us. You can even go to your favorite podcast platform and look up Super Talk Outdoor and listen that way. But anyway, it's May the 5th, 2025. It is amazing how fast time is going by. Listen, we spent some time up in the Mississippi Delta this weekend. My son Jordan and I went up there and we joined our friend Terry. And on the farms that I lease and some land that my partners own, we did some work. We did some experimenting at one of the farms last year. My friend Terry was pretty committed to this. And he planted some summer plots. And we watched those summer plots grow. And it was truly amazing, man. I mean, the science behind the summer plots and what it did to attract deer, watching the sunflowers and other plants grow, it was pretty cool. And when it came time to plant the food plots, we didn't use fertilizer on those particular plots. We just planted right into them with a 5-way mix, and they really did well. And so we decided to expand that project and move into 2 other farms. And that's what this weekend was about, going up there and planting. Well, one of the farms is famous for mud. I mean, it's really famous for mud, and it had rained a good bit up in the Mississippi Delta. And I knew when we downloaded the 4-wheelers on this property, when we first hit the road, it's a mud road, normally a dirt road going across an open field. Immediately, the mud was about 2 inches thick on the wheels. So if you don't go fast and run that mud off, it will stick. Those of you who know Delta Gumbo mud, this is it times 30. And so it was tough just getting around. I was taking a drag with us because where we were headed was a place we could not get a tractor. And man, it was rough. Finally, I disconnected the drag because the drag had so much mud on it. It weighed about a ton. We made our way through some water. We eventually got to where we wanted to plant. We did some work there. We relocated a stand. I had to go back out, bring the drag back around. I had to literally pluck the mud off this drag so I could even move it. Eventually there was a piece of plywood that had blown off a truck on the highway. And I said, well, maybe we could use that piece of plywood to lay into this ditch and make it good enough so we could at least drag the drag, through this ditch, which we did. I went to get the piece of plywood and put it down, got the drag around, we got it over there. And turns out we could actually use the plywood as literally a bridge for the 4-wheelers. I didn't think that would be acceptable. I was afraid we were going to sink the 4-wheelers, but Jordan felt pretty confident we could do it. I tried it, I made it, and went back across again. Anyway, that was the story of our weekend, man. By the time we got done on that day, that was Saturday, we were literally coated in mud, had a little bit of work to do on Sunday, and then we had to clean the 4-wheelers. And it literally took 2 hours to get the 4-wheelers clean. It was wild, but we got everything done. We sprayed food plots that we were planting. We got the summer plots down. I met some cool people in the process. We actually went over to Nutrien Ag Solution. I met a guy named Stephen Hobson. Told him I'd give him a shout out on the show. But Stephen, we got some soybeans from him. We planted some soybeans in a couple of fields just to see how they do. And anyway, it was a busy, beautiful weekend. We got up yesterday morning. It was 55 degrees. It was so beautiful in the Mississippi Delta yesterday morning. And now we look forward to continuing the process. We'll get these summer plots up, and then later in August, we'll start to do some spraying and get ready to plant. We don't usually plant our food plots until like the early days of October. And we've had really good results doing it that way. And so, so it begins. As I've often said, hunting is awesome. To me, hunting, the actual process of hunting or harvesting a deer is literally the icing on the cake. But the cake is all the activities that surround it, the 365 days a year, the management process, the managing the land, getting it ready, the camaraderie, the time you spend together at the camp. And I'm in the process now writing a book. I'll tell you more about it in the future, but it's a book about hope. And it was born as a result of some experiences I had after Hurricane Katrina. But I had got up early. I tend to get up early anyway, and did some writing while in the Delta. And as I'm writing, I'm looking out the window and watching this beautiful sunrise over this 1,000-acre ag field. Man, there's something literally divine about that experience. And I'm so lucky to be in that position where I can be there with my kids and my kids' kids and enjoying the outdoors with them. In fact, one of the lessons in this book is about the outdoors and how it can help renew you and how it can give you hope. And I experienced that this past weekend. That is for sure. Today, we've got a great show. I'm so excited about this. I had the opportunity to visit with my friend Drew St. John, who will be joining the commission on the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks in July. And he bragged about our next guest. His name is Jacob Dykes. He's the assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist at Mississippi State University. And he also holds the important title of the co-director of the MSU Deer Lab, the Mississippi State Deer Lab. You've heard me talk about it many times. Bronson Strickland's been on the show many times. But Jacob's going to be with me for the whole show today, and I'm so excited to have him. So without any further ado, let's move over and welcome my friend Jacob Dykes to the show. He's a PhD from Texas A&M, I might add. We'll come back to all of his history, growing up in Amory, et cetera. But for the show, how you doing, my friend?
I am doing great, Ricky, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be here with you this morning. Looking forward to this conversation. I got a lot to talk about. Excited to be back in Mississippi. It's going to be a good one. So thank you for having me.
Well, man, we're excited to have you here. I don't have to tell you about the incredible history Mississippi has in leading deer management in the nation. And, I believe as we go forward, we're going to continue to do amazing things. With the outbreak of CWD, which we can talk about at some point in the conversation, one of the things we're working to get through the legislature is harvest reporting by county, which we need. In fact, we're the only state in the nation, being this leader as it relates to deer management, being the only state in the nation that doesn't have county-specific harvest data is something we need to overcome. But aside from that, we're a big leader in the industry, that, and now you're in this role where you can help, not just Mississippi, but the entire nation when it comes to the work that you're doing at the Deer Lab. You got to be like blown away by that opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And you had mentioned it. How well Mississippi is known for cutting edge work and the research and basically conservation, right? Especially when it comes to whitetail deer. And I'm a product of the people that you've just mentioned, right? I came out of the Deer Lab. I was at Mississippi State University for many years, and my goal is to keep marching forward in what the good work has been done, and then continue to take this a little bit further and hit this a little bit harder.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. And again, I've heard terrific things about you. Hey, so we got about 2 minutes left in this segment, but what we'll do, we'll start with this, and we'll just pick up back on the other side. But you grew up in Amory, Mississippi. Did you fall in love with the outdoors young in life?
Man, I have been hunting before I was truly hunting. Like my dad was, I'm so thankful for it, but I was one of those that well before I could hold a gun or handle a gun or anything like that, I was at least sitting by him, throwing sticks in the leaves, making a bunch of noise to ensure we didn't see anything. So I've been hunting, fishing as long as I can remember, and I'm very, very thankful, especially these days, for that.
Yeah, listen, Jacob, my sons love to, everyone in my family loves to fish. I have a daughter as well. My wife loves to fish as well. But my sons, Jordan and Justin, love to hunt. And now Jordan has a son who is 4 years old. And my daughter, Tori, has a son who is, I think, 6 or 7. I should know. But Brody's amazing. He's been hunting with us the last couple of years. Their daughter is hunting with us, Riley, and she really loves being out there. But we got home yesterday, and And Liam, Jordan's son, who is 4, he just wanted to know, did we see any deer? Of course, we saw deer, but, in his mind, we were deer hunting. And, where do we stay? And what are we going to do when we get there? And Jordan says, Liam, the best part about hunting is the snacks. And Liam just smiles big, but we're going to be taking him this year. So we're really excited about it. But this generational pass down of this love of the outdoors, man, we're fortunate to be there. I know I often say on this show that some people don't get the love of the outdoors until they get a little bit later in life from somebody that gives them the experience. But I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that when we get back on the other side. But when we get back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Dr. Jacob Dykes. He's the assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist. He's also the co-director of the Mississippi State Deer Lab. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Hope you're having a great day, and we really appreciate you joining us. Listen, are you looking to purchase your perfect piece of hunting property, upgrade your farm equipment, or have you been dreaming of owning your slice of heaven out in the country? Look no further than Mississippi Land Bank for your financing needs. For more than 100 years, farming families and landowners in North Mississippi have turned to Mississippi Land Bank for all kinds of financial solutions. It's for land, equipment, or livestock. Listen, for more information, go to mslandbank.com or go by and see one of their friendly staff at any of their offices. We're thrilled to have Mississippi Land Bank as one of the sponsors of Super Talk Outdoors. Now let's get back over to my friend Jacob Dykes, who's the assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist. He's also the co-director of the MSU Deer Lab at Mississippi State University. Jacob, listen, when I was talking about this generational thing, this passing down from fathers and grandfathers to us, that's such a beautiful heritage, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. And, my worry is, and I'm a new father, I've got a 7-month-old, and it really kind of brings that to light of how important that is. The way that I was raised, I feel like you don't see that too often anymore. It's more like the movie style of being raised. Like when it started getting dark, I was looking back towards the house because my mom would flip the light on and off. That means it's time to come home. Just my motivation growing up was to get outside, in nature, immersed in nature. And I'm, passing that on to my son is very important to me.
Jacob, yeah, for me, it was when the street lights came on in my neighborhood. When the lights came on, it was time to go home. But we had woods behind my back. We didn't have deer, in that part of where I was raised. But we had woods, and I spent as did my friends, an enormous amount of time in those woods. And then across the street was the bayou in Gulfport, and we spent a lot of time fishing there. But I fell in love with it so early. And, we're just fortunate that we had, the ability to connect in that way. And now you're in this important role that, you can really, really make a difference. So you decided along the way, you fell in love with the outdoors. You decided to go to Mississippi State University, and your degree ultimately was in aquaculture. I noticed, and that was a great opportunity for you, wasn't it?
Well, so it's a little bit different. So the degree offered here is wildlife fisheries and aquaculture. So it's the wildlife degree encapsulated in there. And I've got a pretty interesting story of how I ended up here. It got into high school, and it was pretty evident that my passion for the outdoors, wildlife, was a little bit deeper than my buddies. It was kind of what you described earlier. It wasn't just pulling the trigger or harvesting an animal. It was the pursuit, the putting the puzzle pieces together kind of thing. And so that was pretty evident early on, but I didn't realize that this was a career field, right? So I went to Itawamba Community College, general studies, and then I ended up meeting the deer program coordinator for Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And at the time it was Lan Wilf. And I met him and was like, wow, so you're telling me like I can pursue my passions and make a little money doing it. And that is when I transitioned to Mississippi State University in the College of Forest Resources, and started working on my bachelor's of wildlife fisheries and aquaculture with the wildlife focus.
And you also get your master's at Mississippi State, but then you decided to go to Texas A&M University in Kingsville for your PhD. That was I was thrilled, by the way, that you spent some time in Texas because they have unique challenges there that it's good to have learned as a result of that, and bring back that experience here. I think anytime you can go outside Mississippi and learn kind of a different perspective on things, it really is going to make you better at what you do. And by the way, the co-director position at the MSU Deer Lab isn't just a Mississippi focused position. It's a whitetail deer focused position. And so that experience in Texas was terrific for you, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anytime you can diversify your skill set. I mean, when we're talking South Texas versus the Southeast, I mean, we're talking drastically different, and just the way that the landscape works and the way that you manage wildlife. I mean, it's just completely different. So, anytime you can go and see and do and get those experiences, learn a little bit more, it's impactful. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. You know, we're in Mississippi, and of course we're serving Mississippi, but our goal is to have a global MSU Deer Lab, and Bronson Strickland and Dr. Steve Damaris, they've done a phenomenal job of blowing this thing up, and we're just going to keep expanding, of course. So,
yeah. When you say blowing up, you mean don't not literally, but figuratively. The reality, I think they've done a great job of tapping into social media and creating a following and trying to be sort of the rational view. It's interesting with whitetail deer, and I think this is probably going to be true with anything. I think partly because of CWD, but there's all these different views. And I think what I've noticed in Mississippi State University's Deer Lab has been the voice of reason, the voice of research, the voice of, this is the way that it is. And I think that Steve and Bronson have done a good job of kind of bringing that clarity to the table. And now you're part of that. That's got to be pretty cool.
oh, absolutely. And like I said, I'm a product of the Deer Lab. Those two guys are my mentors. Still talk with them regularly. Great buddies of mine. So yeah, they've taught me the majority of what I know, and they've had a huge impact. I always throw this out there. My claim to fame is if you go to the MSU Deer Lab Facebook page and you go to the first person ever pictured, it's me as a new grad student standing in a field of clover. And so, it started at that point, and now, like what I said, and absolutely in good ways, has absolutely blown this thing up. I mean, they've got a huge impact, and they're making sure that people are hearing what science is telling us right now, and that is important.
Hey, listen, speaking of a field of clover, I rode through one from, it was the 5-way mix has 3 different kinds of clover in it. And it was, this is what we have for our food plots, but, it's continued to grow. It's got lots of rain. I saw clover fields 3 feet high, man. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Of course, this is before in the Mississippi Delta, nature has a way of reclaiming land. So it won't take long before the weeds and vines and you name it, go in there and start to take over. But it's interesting. You went to Texas A&M. You got your PhD, but you ended up staying with Texas A&M, and so you gained a tremendous amount of experience that you bring into this new role at Mississippi State University. That experience at Texas was really terrific. Well, it was beyond terrific. It's very important, actually, is what I really wanted to say.
Yeah, yeah, and just to clarify, so I went to Texas A&M University of Kingsville, down in Kingsville, Texas, the famous King Ranch, and worked on my PhD with the Caesar Kleberg Wildlife Research Institute. After I finished that up, and that crew, if you've ever looked into that crew, they're amazing as well. But after finishing that up, I got hired on at Texas A&M proper, or the college station, the mothership, if you will. And I actually stayed down in Corpus Christi at an experiment station. So with all that said, I had a very similar role here as I do here as a assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist. And my job in Texas was essentially to travel the whole state and do wildlife research and then talk about wildlife research, help landowners accomplish their goals, essentially make sure that science-based information was getting into the hands of landowners so they could have an impact on their property. So, yeah, invaluable experience. It was great. Worked with a great group of people. Continue to grow as a scientist. Yeah, wouldn't trade it for anything. Amazing group of people down there doing a lot of good work.
Hey, listen, we had a really important meeting once. I was when I was at the Sun Herald. I was uh, I was a government appointee. This is early in my career to the Gulf of Mexico program, and one of the women from from Texas was a large property owner. She owned land adjacent to the King Ranch, and we went down to have a meeting, a joint meeting with Mexico and the U.S. in Brownsville, and she hosted a reception and a get together at her ranch. And my goodness, buddy, I've never seen anything like that before. And then, we're looking at this map to see these thousands of acres that she owned, and then seeing her ranch in relation to the King Ranch, and to see it all up front and personal, and to get the story of it and so on. What an amazing place to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And the history is there. Like it's one of the way I describe it to people is the history is just right there in front of you. Like it's you're able to reach out and touch it, and that's one of the coolest things about all of those, giant ranches. Of course, it's a different world when you come from Mississippi to South Texas and you start getting on these 100,000 acre ranches and seeing, some of the management they've done for the last 100 years. And it's a different world. Everybody should go check it out.
Wow, it really is. Listen, when we get back after break with Jacob Dykes, who's the assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist and the co-director of the MSU Deer Lab at Mississippi State University, we're going to talk more about what he does these days, and how excited he is to be back in Mississippi at Mississippi State University. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with my new friend, Jacob Dykes. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors as we visit with Jacob Dykes. He's a PhD, he's assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist, and the co-director of the Mississippi State University Deer Lab at Mississippi State. For outdoorsmen, especially deer lovers, about the Deer Lab and the work that they have done, and how they've influenced deer management around the United States, maybe even the world for that matter. But we'll get back to Jacob. Hey, Jacob, we're going to continue about what you do now, and about the work that you do, but I just want to mention something. When I was talking about the muddy experience I had in the Mississippi Delta this past weekend, and the mud piling up, and a lot of people would have given up and said, "No, we can't do it." But man, we were up from the coast; we had to get it done. I noticed you smiling. Have you experienced that mud before?
Oh, absolutely. I can't tell you how many days and hours and months of feral hog trapping in the Delta. And it's a different world. People can't experience that type of mud without getting out there to the Delta. I mean, it's wild. But yes, I have run into all sorts of issues. I've heard popping and tearing up this and that and everything else, and just been covered in mud. And yeah, I've lived that life.
Hey, listen, I mentioned to my friend Steve Azar, who's the music and cultural ambassador from Mississippi. He wrote the new state song, One Mississippi. And, he had a terrific career, lives in the Greenville area. Now he actually has his own show in downtown Greenville associated with Viking Cruise Lines. But I've told him he's got to write a song about stuck in the Delta mud. There's got to be a great opportunity there. It could be funny and real at the same time. Anyway,
Absolutely.
getting back to your position. So you come back to Mississippi, you get an opportunity to really impact really in three different roles. I mean, you have a very important role, and we might as well, we should mention too that your work, I mean, the generosity of folks like the St. John's Family Endowment. We should talk about that a bit, but why don't you kind of cover, the kind of at a high level what it is you are up to?
Yeah, one thing that I like to explain to people, a lot of people unfortunately don't know what extension means. So the way that I explain my position as an extension professor is I don't do as much as other professors in the way of like teaching in a classroom. Most of my teaching is doing workshops, symposiums, that kind of thing, working with landowners. So my role, for the most part, is doing research, especially, and then making sure that I'm working with landowners to bridge that gap between the research and the management, right? So it's all fun and games. It doesn't matter how cool the research is if we're not getting the information out to the landowners, right? To put that into use on the landscape. So that is my role as an extension professor. And of course, I'm whitetail deer focused, but what comes with that is a lot of what I do as far as research is what do the citizens of Mississippi need, right? So one of the big things we're getting geared up right now is, as you know, crop depredation. Deer crop depredation is a huge issue right now. And there's all sorts of different facets to that. It's, we need to harvest more deer to make sure those populations are staying where they need to be. We need to figure out ways to be more efficient at that, to be more efficient at estimating deer population sizes, estimating damage, and connecting that back to economic value. So lots of different facets there, but that's one of the bigger projects that I'm getting going right now is trying to take a deeper dive into not only crop deer depredation, but our deer crop depredation, but what can we do? How can we move forward to try to alleviate some of the stress on these producers? So that's a big focus right now.
Hey, Jacob, one of the things we talk about on the show a lot is that Mississippi's lucky because we have so much availability of public land, whether it's through the U.S. Forest Service or whether it's wildlife management areas or whatever. We are so lucky. But 80 to 90% of the land in Mississippi is controlled by private property owners. So that's why the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks have organized private lands consulting programs that are free, incidentally, and that people like William McKinley, particularly as it relates to white-tailed deer, is focused on management across both public and private land. You spend a lot of time talking about it, but at the end of the day, we're kind of dead in the water if private property owners aren't joining in and working together really to manage the resource.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you are in the country. The biggest tool that we have for wildlife habitat management, conservation, whatever label you want to throw it on or throw on it is private landowners. What we do is not impactful unless private landowners are on board with it. I just came from Texas, as we've mentioned. Texas is, the number varies, I guess, but about 97% private. So even more so than Mississippi. So again, what we're doing, the impact that we're having, the number one tool that we have is private landowners. They are crucial. And I try to make sure that everybody I work with knows just how important they are. And how important the work is that they're doing.
Well, when we talk about wildlife management, I mean, let's take Mississippi just specifically, really across all species, whether we're talking about wild turkey or alligator even. There's only so much we can do as it relates to ducks, because obviously it's a migratory species, but we're a lot of focus on habitat and habitat enhancement and so on. Certainly the white-tailed deer, but what's happening now is that across America, best practices emerge as a result of sharing data and these different entities getting together. I mean, we've learned a lot about how to sustain a particular wildlife species. And I think about that a lot as it relates to our kids and our kids' kids, making sure that work we do today is going to be there. The kind of enjoyment we have in the outdoors, what I was talking about earlier, the opportunity to grow big deer, whatever it is your goals are, that we're able to pass that down to our kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids. And when they look back in the future and they look at us, they say, we got it. We got it. Well, the Deer Lab has literally based its entire, work on generational management of wildlife. And that's super important to note, isn't it?
I completely agree, and that's one thing that I think people most understand, but some may not, is that there's never a one and done when it comes to wildlife or habitat management, right? This is a process, a never ending process, especially as we keep throwing wrenches into it by the expanding human populations and urbanization and all of that kind of stuff. But that's the name of the game, is to work with landowners, ensure that they know how important they are, and make sure we provide the tools that they need to be impactful, and just keep passing that down generation to generation.
Hey, listen, I mentioned the St. John and Family Endowment. Drew St. John, who was a member of the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund Board of Trustees, most recently appointed by Governor Reeves and approved by the Senate. His term will start in July to be a new commissioner for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Excited to have him. I love leaders like Drew, who not only a wonderful person, but someone who puts their money where their mouth is. I mean, he believes in Mississippi State University, but he puts his money up helping to fund the Deer Lab. But, what more can you say about that?
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting the St. John's just a couple of weeks ago, and as someone that hasn't been here very long, just getting going back in Mississippi, and I'm under that endowment that the St. John's provide. I was excited to meet them and sit down and talk with them, and I walked away from that meeting just like, man, we've got an ally. These people, they care about this stuff. It's not just funding research and that kind of thing. Like they are passionate about wildlife and habitat management and conservation, and it doesn't happen without people like the St. John's. So we are very appreciative here at the Deer Lab that we have the tools we need to do our job, and it's because of people like the St. John's. I was very lucky to get to hang out with them the other day, and I'm actually going to hang out with them tomorrow too. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I should mention that Robert St. John, Drew's brother, is a really famous restaurateur, chef, entrepreneur. He's a book writer, a producer. He's had TVs on shows on Mississippi Public Broadcasting. I mean, the list goes on and on. But he and his brother, Drew and his brother, really were saved in a way by their mother, who had the vision to open up or to buy a fish camp in Pascagoula. They're from Hattiesburg,
Yeah.
but raising the boys. Their father died when they were young, so raising the boys on the water and letting them understand wildlife. It's great to hear them both talk about that experience and how it affected them in their adult lives, and it's a big deal what they've been able to do for us as it relates to this chair. I'm excited about you being in this position. When we come back on the other side, because we got less than a minute to go, but when we come back on the other side, I want to get into a little bit of the work that you're doing in the final segment. I think one of the wonderful things that Bronson brought to the table as it relates to this show is one of the shows I had was with him and William McKinley talking about chronic wasting disease. Chronic wasting disease, we don't have a cure, as you've heard me say many times on this show. Our goal in Mississippi is to slow it down as best we can to give science a chance to catch up. And what I want to do when we get back on the other side, we'll talk to Jacob about his growing awareness of CWD, his experience in Texas, and how it might influence what he's doing here in Mississippi. We'll see you after this break as we continue our conversation with the co-director of the Mississippi Deer Lab, Jacob Dykes. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors as we continue our conversation with Jacob Dykes, who's the assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist. And he's also the co-director of the MSU Deer Lab at Mississippi State University after a nice tenure at Texas A&M. Which I think helps bring a tremendous perspective to the table. Incidentally, William McKinley, you heard me mention his name a couple of times, head of the deer program for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. I think the world of William, the work that he's doing, not just here in Mississippi, but working with other professionals across the nation to improve deer management, to focus on chronic wasting disease, all the stuff that they're doing. Man, we're lucky to have him. Have you had the opportunity to work with him?
I have. I've worked with William in some capacity for many, many years. He was one of my mentors when I was here before as a student, and now I'm working with him in more of a professional setting. I actually just saw him about 10 minutes before I jumped on here. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I will say we as citizens of Mississippi are very, very lucky to have him steering the ship when it comes to deer management, habitat management, and that kind of thing.
No, there's no doubt about that. As I mentioned, one of the best shows I had in the last year, it's had a lot of good ones because we get to focus on people who are making a difference, is a show that I did with with Bronson Strickland and William McKinley, and we talked about some of the myths behind chronic wasting disease. But you've been able to, I mean, it's in so many ways, it's kind of shaped where you are in your thinking. You were over in Texas, had the opportunity to see it there. The slow march of it across the landscape makes it so darn hard to manage it. And if people could see it, then we could maybe be a little bit more aggressive in dealing with it. But because of the insidious nature of this particular disease and how it affects, white-tailed deer, makes it harder, doesn't it?
Oh, it's tough. It's really tough because you know one of the number one questions I get is, well, why aren't we seeing a bunch of sick deer running around, right? And I'm glad that we're not, but at the same time, it's somewhat unfortunate that the repercussions of this disease are not more obvious, because I think it would make people, it scare people a little bit, and get them more on board with trying to manage this disease. But you're right. You know, I do give a lot of talks about chronic waste and disease. I think the number one thing that we can do to mitigate this disease is awareness, education and awareness. And believe it or not, I still run into people daily that have never heard of it. And if they have heard
Yeah.
of it, they got their information from someone that's not putting out good information. We'll say that.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality of chronic wasting disease is if you want to find something that agrees with your point of view, so let's say you developed a point of view that is anti-CWD, you can go find all the videos you want to find. But here's what I think you'll find, actually. You'll find a lot of older videos that speak to conspiracy theories, but more recently, you're not going to find as many conspiracy theories. There are a couple of one or two notables out there that still scream it's not the problem we think it is. It's always been around and so on. But the growing body of evidence, when you think about the national database and the amount of data that's being collected from across the United States, I believe, as a former CEO, I believe what gets measured gets done. I like data. I like statistics. And, the science behind chronic wasting disease, the tests that are done, the data that's being gathered, what we're learning about the slow march of it, but that we can contain it to some extent, that we can certainly slow it down. That has become super compelling. The lines of converging evidence around it. If you really open your mind and just listen to the really sound science behind it, it's hard to turn your back on it, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But the unfortunate part is, some of these people that are a little louder about it, people hear that and they take it as truth, and they don't necessarily find that science, which is where I come in, right? That's what I do. I travel around and I talk about this kind of stuff, and I'm just the messenger, right? This is science-based information. But there's a lot of really passionate people working really, really hard to try to get a handle on understanding what this disease is and ways that we can mitigate it. So
If you look at Mississippi, of course, unfortunately, it's spreading. But if you look in places like Benton County, Mississippi, where the prevalence has reached an unfortunate point, the outcome there is not good in terms of seeing. If your goal is to manage for big deer, big antler deer, et cetera, the number of mature deer you see are few and far between. And so, what we really need to do is continue to kind of hold up Benton County and counties like it across America to say, we don't want the other counties to look like this. Counties that used to have superb, amazing deer are really not seeing that as much as they used to. But, we'll have, in fact, I think I should plan a show with you and William and just talk about these issues and management. And I think that would, kind of update everybody on what we're learning. I think that would be a really good show. But until then, Jake, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you.
Oh, I've had an absolute blast. It's a great conversation.
So it's been really good. This has been Jacob Dykes, the assistant professor and extension wildlife specialist, also the co-director of the Mississippi State University Deer Lab at Mississippi State and Starkville. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you. Congratulations on your appointment. And we'll see you very soon with William McKinley on the show joining you. Listen, have a great day. And as I often say, keep safety first. Always put safety first. Lots of safety ropes, straps, and the whole 9 yards. God bless you. See you next week.